Okay, welcome back to Francis Kelsey School, Pre-Calculus 11. This is a seminar on Learning Guide 13. This is part 2, a continuation of solving rational equations. All right, now we're going to deal with extraneous roots. So this is the term we've sort of come used to solving and finding it and writing them down. Now it's actually going to be applied to something, so it means something. So when we have a rational equation, when we're solving equations, the extraneous now comes in. So if we have this situation, so let's solve this rational equation right here. So let's click over. Now, let's put a screen down so we don't get confused. Okay, the first thing you want to do when you are solving a rational equation is find the lowest common denominator and the restrictions, or the non-permissibles. So I look at anything that can factor. Oh, that can factor. So we know that is the factor of that. So now we know a common denominator. We have x plus 3, there it's common, and we have x minus 3. So there is my common denominator, my lowest common denominator. And from that, we can get our restrictions. Okay, so these are going to come in play now. So let's move to the second step. The second step is now we're going to multiply our lowest common denominator by each term. So that's why we're putting a bracket. Each term gets a bracket. Very important, so don't miss this step. And there's our lowest common denominator up there. Now it's time to eliminate a denominator. That's why we multiply by a lowest common denominator. So there, crosses off that, and these two cross both of them off. So now we have no denominator. So that's the whole purpose. Okay, now, once we get down to there, we are going to take this 2x and multiply it by what's left over. So that, take this x, multiply it by that. And 18 is just left by itself. Now we expand. Expand just means rainbow. Okay, and we get down to this stage. All right, now we're going to collect like terms. So collecting like terms, we're left with this. Now we're going to factor, which we get to here because 3 is a GCF. And then this factors to those two parts, because that times that is that, that times that, and then we have our solutions. So if I just back up at this stage right here, if you don't want to factor, you can go to your quad program. You're not going to lose any marks. So using your calculator and your quad program, you can type in 3 is your A, your B is -3, and your C is -18. And what would come up is these same roots or solutions. Now here it's time to check. Before you say final answer and move on, you have to check for solutions. Now, remember we looked up here, we got the extraneous, so we knew that x could not equal -3 and x could not equal +3. Well, here's a case where we have a solution. We did our algebra, we got a solution of 3. It matches a restriction. So in math, we call that extraneous. It doesn't happen. It will not be a solution. So our only solution is that. So that goes into the solution box or your answer box. And you got to let me know EXT beside that, because if you don't, you'll lose a half a mark. Okay, now we always should check, because maybe -2 is not, or pardon me, -2 is not a solution. So we have a tool, we might as well use it, and that's called our graphing calculator. Okay, so we're going to go to our graphing calculator, and we are going to see if this is a solution or not. Okay. The previous Learning Guide seminar, we did it by substitution. We put in -2 into all the x's. You can do that as well. We have this tool. So let's just use our calculator. So we're going to graph this. So it's bracket 2x, close the bracket, divides by bracket. You've got to remember these brackets, very important. If you don't put the brackets in, you will not get it right. That plus bracket x divides by bracket x, take away 3. Now, I'm going to move the negative, the 18 over to the other side, so it becomes negative 18. So minus 8, oops, oh, minus 18. Divides by bracket x squared subtract 9 bracket. Okay. Now, I didn't put a bracket around 18, I should have, but it'll work because when you have one term, you can get away with no bracket. But when you have two terms like 2 and an x, or x minus 3, it has to be a bracket. So now I'm going to go down to y2, put in a 0, and graph. Okay, now, we had a solution of x equals minus 2. So I've got to put a trace on that. And a trace is how you know if it's a solution or not. So I go trace, type in negative 2, enter. Now, if you get a 0, right here, a 0, this is a solution. If you don't, it's not a solution. So I just checked to make sure that is a solution. So I know that is a solution. All right. Now we're going to move on. Okay, to try this question. So for this question here, we are going to do some factoring on the bottom. So we get x, 3 and 2 and minus and plus. Okay, now we can figure out our lowest common denominator. So we have x plus 2, x minus 3, because it's common here and common there. And we can get our restrictions. X cannot equal negative 2, x cannot equal 3. So keep those in mind. Next step, get rid of these denominators by multiplying everything. So let's make that plus minus. Everything by the common denominator. And the common denominator is x plus 2, x minus 3, x plus 2, x minus 3, x plus 2, x minus 3. Okay? Now let's cancel off. So that cancels that. That cancels that. That cancels that. That cancels that. Okay, so what are we left with? The 3 in the x is left with the x minus 3 to distribute. The minus 5 and the x plus the 2. And just the minus 25. Okay, let's distribute. So we get 3x squared minus 9x. We get minus 5x minus 10. So now we have like terms coming together. This comes over and we add a 25, so it's plus 15. Okay, I don't feel like doing triple play. It's going to be too much for my brain at this point, so I'm going to use my quad. So A equals, B equals, C equals, so we got 3, negative 14, 15. Typed it into my calculator, and x3 and 1.66 popped out, which we know as 1 2/3, which we know as 5/3. So this is the best answer. X equals 5/3. Okay, now we've done all our algebra to get our solutions. Now we just do a quick check, and look what I notice. a solution equals restriction. So what do we put? Extraneous, so EXT. Now let's see if this is a solution or not. Okay, let's go to our handy calculator and let's graph it to make sure it is. All right, so now let's go to our Y equals button. Let's clear what we had from before. It's good to keep your Y2 in there. So let's just clear that. All right. So now let's go to type in. So let's go bracket 2x, close the bracket. All right, and hang on, I'm looking at the wrong question. Pardon me. It's 3. Divides by bracket x plus 2, x plus 2. All right, and then we have subtract 5. Again, I don't have to put 5 because it's just a number all by itself. Divides by bracket x, take away 3. And then we move the negative 25 over, it becomes positive 25. And again, I don't have to worry about putting a bracket because it's a number all by itself. No letter or anything attached. And we have x squared minus x minus 6, close the bracket. And keep your y2 equals 0 in, now graph. Now we know we have an answer of 5 over 3, so we do a trace. 5 divided by 3, enter, and voila, we got a 0. So we know 5 over 3 is the solution. All right, so let's move on.